Hey everyone, Happy New Year, and welcome to the year's first episode of D&D Horror Story Cringe with D&D Doge. In today's video, we have a story about what happens when a player takes the term homebrew a tad too literally. A story about a player using a friend to get back at a DM, and much more. So, without further ado, let's get right into these stories. Used by a friend to punish a DM who called her out for her metagaming. By Reddit user, aka Snowski. This happened the Thursday before Christmas. So I'm between gaming campaigns, and a friend texted me asking if I'm available for a game at the local game store on Thursday nights, as they had just lost a player due to getting orders to move out of state. I was free those nights. The nice thing about a 9-to-5 job is that all nights are free, and so I said yes, and what does the party need? She said that they could use a 6th level rogue, and so I whipped one up, sent it to the DM, and had it approved, with a few gifts from the DM of level suitable minor magic items to help me slot right on in. The DM asks if I could come early to the game night so that he could feel my character and playing style out. So Thursday night comes along, and I get there early. DM and I get along as my roleplay style seems to fit his expectations and the current party dynamics. He starts the session with a one-on-one, with me in the tavern and seeing what I do. Since my backstory was a scout for a local mercenary company, I was looking for a place to settle down and use as a home base when not adventuring, so a visit to the tavern was important. As a halfling, good food, good cider, good entertainment, and good company was important. Finding all this in the local tavern, I was sitting at the bar and singing along with the bard and chatting with the bar staff. The rest of the table arrives, and we get to the game. The party is in the same town I'm in, and they start looking for the much-needed rogue for the adventure, and just so happen on the tavern that I'm in. Here's where things go south. My friend was the face of the group and popped in first. The DM gives a description of me, and as soon as the words, "You see a halfling sitting at the bar," are spoken, my friend says, "Fuck, it's an edgelord," and turns right around and leaves the tavern, stopping the rest of the party from entering, saying, "No one in there who will suit us. Let's go look in another tavern." The DM asks what's going on, and my friend says, "We don't need an edgy McEdgelord in our party." The DM then explains that my character wasn't being an edgelord, and was in fact being more the stereotypical halfling, enjoying a night out on the town, singing, drinking, eating, and just having a good old time. My friend says, "Oh," and looks at the rest of the party, and then says, "Let's head to another tavern and look for a rogue." Pretty much everyone looks at her with a WTF look on their faces, and one of the party asks, "But didn't the DM say that she is not being edgy and is just being a chill halfling?" My friend responds, "Yes, but that's player knowledge and not character knowledge. Based on my initial and mistaken first impression, I, the character, think that it's a dark and brooding halfling rogue, even though I, the player, know it's not." She looked at the DM and smirks, and then says, "And after all, I can't act on player knowledge since that's metagaming." The DM swears and then asks to talk to my friend privately. They go off and have a rather heated argument about metagaming. I look at one of the other players, and they tell me that my friend has been called out several times about her metagaming, and she wasn't happy about being called out on it. 10 minutes go by, and I wander over to where they're having their argument to try and get their attention. The DM says, "Give me a minute, please," while my friend snaps at me with, "Shut the f*** up and go sit down. I'm busy." I sit down and wait another 10 minutes, and they're still at it. By now, the rest of the table has wandered off. One slipped out to get McDonald's, one went to the bathroom, and 2 others were looking at minis. At that point, I packed up and left, but I didn't make a scene, so no one noticed. I got home, and then my phone went off, so I answered since it was my friend. I didn't get a word in edgewise from her ranting about how the party was screwed since my promised rogue was now AWOL. Funny, there was an available rogue, but eventually, I just tuned out her rantings, set my phone to Do Not Disturb, hung up, and started binge watching Christmas specials. I haven't heard from her since. Well, that is certainly a messed up thing for a friend to do. Asking someone to take time out of their day to make a character and invest time into going to a game store to fill a slot in your party, only to use that person to make some stupid point about metagaming that doesn't make any sense. How would her character know anything about OP's character in the first place? Just knowing that he was a rogue was above table knowledge, so in her attempt to prove a point to her DM about metagaming, she metagames? Then she has the gall to call OP and yell at him for leaving because they needed a rogue? If I was that DM, she would be gone from the game for pulling a stunt like that. And if I was OP, I would have a long hard talk with her about the meaning of friendship. Let's move on. Describe your DM's DMPC by Reddit user Gabe the Crow. To preface, this campaign fizzled out a while ago, and there were some fun moments. Most of the people involved were nice, and nothing truly horrible ever happened, but man, it was annoying. In what I remember being our 12th session, the DM introduced a drow elf warlock named Twitch. Twitch was also the DM's online nickname, and Twitch's patron subclass was a homebrew pact that they mentioned they were developing to us offhandedly during a previous session. They were described as a dark, tattered, cloaked figure with short, spiky hair, a length of black cloth wrapped around their face, and a chain holding a blade to their waist. They also highlighted the fact that their eyes were glowing a dark red. They seemed to always be looking at their shifting shadow, and that they were angrily muttering something as they stomped by us to add some extra mysterious edge. The session took place at a festival, and unintentionally became a bit of a downtime session. This character somehow ended up involved in almost all of our personal activities. Our wizard's girlfriend was a drow sorceress, and it turns out Twitch was their brother. So after the couple had their moment in the festival, Twitch pulled the wizard aside and gave a whole "don't break my sister's heart" speech. Our monk cleric was unwinding at a pub, and Twitch initiated a conversation based on how familiar they looked. It turns out Twitch knew them before the monk cleric had their mind altered by a big celestial event. Our sorcerer was doing research at a nearby library, and Twitch happened to be around and began asking some awkward questions about how powerful they were until wrapping it up by asking if the sorcerer could help him understand his patron. Then, he started to interact with my barbarian. He started talking about how we're kin and showed me a necklace with the symbol of a drow goddess. My barbarian, not being too bright, decides to try to swipe the necklace, and due to the confrontation and the character's trauma surrounding carnivals, I decided to rage. I played a slightly modified wild magic barbarian, and as the blast from my surge went off, Twitch was able to contain it all using his magic. They then tossed the necklace to me and left. Once we spent some time at the festival, it was back to business, and on to the next mission. It's then said that Twitch will accompany us, which would make the number of DM-played characters in our party 3, including the Ranger and Rogue that have accompanied us since the first session. Now, I want to hear from y'all. Let's see what DMPC you either had to deal with or ended up creating during your dark days as a DM. Yeah, that definitely sounded like your typical edgy DM self-insert situation there, where they are dark and mysterious and somehow have a link to every member of the party and then invites themselves on their quest. Then to come and find out that they already have 2 more DMPCs with the party already. It sounds to me like this DM just wanted to write a story about his characters, and the player characters were just along for the ride. Don't get me wrong, sometimes DMPCs can be done right, but you can't make them a super important character. A personal example is when my DM had one join us for a little while after they had a vision of our cleric, helped us with a quest, but then had to go investigate a link to a thing that our party was going after. She will still pop up now and again through sending to give us updates on her quest, and it's used to give us occasional plot hooks. So yeah, while I'm not personally against DMPCs in general, they do need to be done with some finesse. So, like OP asked, do you all have some DMPC stories? If so, and would like it to be shared on the channel, be sure to post it to the D&D Doge subreddit, and who knows, it may just end up in a video. But with that said, let's move on. The Game That Ruined 2 Marriages by Reddit user Subject Barracuda 824. About 10 years ago, I played in a small group of mutual friends every other week. This wasn't my first campaign, so I had a good idea of the mechanics and character building, etc. On the other hand, one of the other members of the group, let's call her M, was a new player. M was new to tabletop RPGs, but very excited to try them. Fast forward about 3 months, and M now has a character that is interested in another member of the party, played by W. M decides to have her character pursue W's character, after clearing it with him, and all is well. Or so we thought. It turns out that although both M and W were married to different people outside of the party, they were spending copious amounts of time planning out character romances with one another out of the game, so much so that they began to fall for one another. M confesses to W her out-of-character feelings, and W reciprocates. They both decided to leave their spouses, though thankfully they are both childless. While the game continued without any more drama, this is still a reminder I have told other groups about the dangers of character bleed. Well, I guess people can find love anywhere. As one commenter put it, this story sounds like it could be the basis for a nerdy Lifetime movie. I don't have much more to say, other than I hope it works out in the end for all parties involved. But before we get into the final story of the day, I have to ask that, if you're enjoying the video, that you give it a like and a comment. Also, consider subscribing if you haven't done so already. If not for me, then how about for some kitties? But with the standard YouTube stuff out of the way, let's get into this story. Homemade Absinthe and Role-Playing Don't Mix by Reddit user The Singular Anyone. If the title itself didn't give enough of a clue, this happened when I was in college, which for me was a little while back. I had a regular group that I ran with 3 players and myself, the DM. It was a pretty fun, casual group. We played mostly old World of Darkness games and D&D 4th edition, and did so in the common area of one of the dorms. It was usual for random folks to stop by and watch, or even join in as an NPC if they felt so inclined. My regular players were Craig, a classic grognard, but really a nice guy, a huge fan of making characters that collect secrets, doesn't drink, which, as you can guess, is important for later. Eddie, a dude practically made of chaos energy, always makes the characters that poke all the things. In other words, a DM goldmine. Angie, a crafty do-it-yourselfer, both in and out of play. She usually preferred to play scientists or hackers. Anyway, alcohol and energy drinks regularly flowed freely at the table, though usually not to excess. With this in mind, Angie decided that she wanted to make some alcohol of her own and bring it along to share. She found a recipe for absinthe on the internet, as she couldn't buy it directly apparently, which involved taking Everclear and adding some mystery packets she also found on the internet, letting it sit for a while, and then quaffing it down. Being in college and not yet skeptical of mystery internet packets, I figured what the hell, and gave her the green light to bring it along. And bring it along, Angie did. That fateful evening, we were playing Mage: The Ascension, one of my favorite games of all time. The idea behind it is, basically, that it's a modern game, but that reality is what everyone believes that it is. But you're a wizard, and you can believe extra hard to make reality do what you want it to. If you think, for example, that a weird blood sigil has the power to transmute corn into bees, you have enough training, and the dice like you, congrats on your new bee army. The catch is that if normal people see you doing things that clearly break reality, you get points of paradox, which the DM gets to gleefully cash in later to cause reality to rebound horribly into your character in many imaginative ways. The game was well underway, and it was a long-running campaign at this point. We passed the absinthe around several times, and everyone agreed that it tasted, or smelled in Craig's case, awful. Fortunately, Eddie had brought along a couple liters of Sprite, and we all made the grand decision of drinking the fake absinthe with Sprite as a mixer. Coincidentally, this somehow completely masked the taste, such that, after the first few sips, we all pretty much forgot that we were drinking alcohol. I'm sure you can guess where this is going. Now, I've got a pretty high tolerance, and Angie was nursing her drink, but Eddie, the chaos being that he was slamming back cups of the Sprite synth like nothing. I stopped counting after cup number 4, honestly. After all, it seemed like it was only improving his role-playing. The first real warning sign, except for all the others, was when Eddie started bobbing and weaving at the table. Like true friends, we got him some water and propped his head up on a stack of books. Problem solved. That is, until Eddie said the fateful words, "Guys, I don't feel so." Our collective first reaction was to scream and dodge backward from the neon yellow rocket of vomit exiting Eddie's body. I'd say it was like the classic scene from The Exorcist, except it wasn't. Where the movie had a constant stream, Eddie managed to produce something more akin to a concentrated shotgun blast of the most vile, nasty, rank vomit I've ever smelled in my life, to this day. Then someone shouted, "The books!" Our books that were propping Eddie up, as well as our battle map, remained firmly on the table. Due to quick hands, or the sheer velocity of the puke, the books escaped, mostly unscathed, but the battle map and several character sheets were straight up laminated in a greasy layer of sick. We stood back, abjectly horrified. Eddie, gasping, met our eyes and said, "I'm so sorry." And then the second wave hit. This time, it was less of a blast, and more of a fountain. Eddie produced a massive puddle that quickly formed a moat at our feet, easily 3 feet wide at its thickest point. It made all of us take a collective leap back as it hit the ground with force. At this point, I recall hearing a mild "herk" noise from Angie, who peeled out of the room as fast as her legs could carry her. Craig sighed in pure sobriety, threw his hands in the air, and walked out, clearly sick of our shit. Which, fair. That left me, the only one who could mildly tolerate the smell, to drag Eddie out from the table, collect the rest of what could be salvaged in a trash bag, and attempt to clean up the catastrophe with only a handful of paper towels, and the power of positive thinking. I didn't do real well on any of those accounts, for the record. The smell had thoroughly filled the space at this point, which is remarkable because the common room was very large, about the square footage of a high school gym with a much lower ceiling. Thankfully, no one else was present, though during the cleanup, I did have several people come in and do an immediate about-face. Angie had recovered enough by this point to help clean up Eddie once he exited, and Craig volunteered to take our gaming supplies and do the best he could with them, while Angie and myself dragged Eddie back to his dorm room on the other side of campus. Our cross-campus journey was punctuated at first by Eddie apologizing repeatedly, but he finally settled on just having fun with it. He kept yelling, "I'm a mage!" or "I'm a wizard!" at different groups of people we ran into as we dragged him along, and all of them reacted about as you'd expect. When one group of girls stopped to watch, he even improvised a bit, drunkenly yelling out, "Don't watch me do magic! You'll give me paradox!" Finally, we settled him into his dorm room, propped him up on some pillows, and thoroughly killed the mood for his roommate, who had had a girl over. Myself and Angie finally stepped outside, breathed some fresh air, and did a long stare into oblivion for a bit. Then, we made our way back to the common room, where we left the not absinthe, and poured the rest of it down the sink. Eddie survived after a day of unholy suffering the next morning, and Craig, rightly, gave us shit over it for months to come. Angie vowed never to make internet alcohol again, and I naturally learned nothing from the experience at all. Well, that puts a whole new spin on tabletop RPG homebrews. You would think that not ordering weird things online to make homemade drinks with would be common sense, but college will college. I gotta give it to OP though. I would not have been able to stay in that room and clean up that mess, as that would have caused me to also exorcist all over the place. And I can sympathize with Eddie on how he felt the following morning, as I know I've been there before. Thankfully, Angie learned a valuable lesson after all this, and will no longer order shady things to put into your body online. That, and they were able to at least save some of the books. But that is all we have time for today. As always, I appreciate all of you, and I hope everyone has a fantastic 2023. Until next time.